Yay, I think we're actually live. Howdy. Give you guys a couple of minutes to log on. If you're on catch up, please let us know that you're on catch up and just say catch up or replay or something like that, just so that I know that you're there. So, hi, welcome to this month's Friday Night Live. This month I am joined by, and this always confuses me, I think I have to do it the opposite way because it's mirrored. I am somewhere to one side of me is the lovely Zech Perry. Hi, Zach.
Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. I've been into town today, so yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially it's bad enough at the best of times, but at the moment I can imagine it's a little bit weird in there.
Well, yeah, I've been spending kind of lots of money on books, and I've now got an embargo on books, and I decided, well, I've actually not bought any summer clothes this year, any clothes this year, So yeah, this is my new shirt.
This new, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Really
Wearing it especially for you, Rachel.
Just because you're going to do my life. I love it. I'm just going to take it that you dressed up and bought all these clothes just for this evening. So Zach is here to help me talk about a topic which is spiritual cultural appropriation. It is a big topic that I think that we kind of need to think about and talk about in a really balanced way within the community. And it's something that Zach and I have had a couple of chats about. So what I think we'll probably do is I'll let Zach tell you a little bit more about himself and about his spiritual background, and let him talk about his cultural heritage as well. I'm obviously British and I'm white, but my heritage is that I've got an Irish mother and an English father. So that's where I sit with regard to my influences and where I come from in terms of my background. So Zach, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, so I've just left work to go back to university. So I'm just finished my first year of psychology at Solent, which is fantastic. I'm actually from South London originally, and my mum is second generation immigrant to this country. So does that make sense? My mum was born in this country, but her mum was born in Guyana, South America.
Yeah.
And she was invited over in the 1950s to work in the newly formed NHS, like so many people were.
Yeah.
Like you, my dad is half English, half Irish, but we always leave the English bit out of it. We always say my dad's Irish because he likes that. So I suppose yeah, I'm half Guyanese and half Irish, and I'm from South London. My journey in Hampshire started about 5 years ago, so yeah, I've got a good feel for the place and the people. But I definitely kind of still see myself as a Londoner, and I think I probably always will. And it's funny because since kind of like all of this wonderful BLM stuff has started to happen, I'm connecting even stronger with my roots as a South Londoner, because South London is possibly one of the most diverse places on the planet, and it's something that I'm particularly proud of, and it's something that kind of I feel it's been a great gift that I've grown up in, with so much diversity and so many different cultures and things like that. And I've also kind of like been party to many different narratives. Kind of, in South London, you've got mansion alongside block of flats, and that creates a really interesting dynamic. Magically speaking, or spiritually speaking, whichever angle we're using, kind of. Magically speaking, I am a witch.
Mm.
I've been a witch. I've self-identified as a witch since I was probably about 14, on the cusp of 15 years old. My mother was really supportive with it when I was that young. She bought me my first set of tools. She bought me all my
Wow.
books. Yeah, it was fantastic. She bought me all my books, all of my herbs. I remember going to her one day and saying, "Mum, for this Martian ritual, I've got to burn a bit of tobacco in one of my incenses." Um, they're dead set against smoking. They bloody hate it. When actually, what I really wanted to do was have a cheeky fag on my bed. And yeah, they said yeah, and they said, well, as long as it's for part of your work, part of your ritual, that's fine. But yeah, so I've always felt really held and really supported in my practice as a witch. And things happen, and I think in between the ages of maybe 17 and 19, I suppose I subdued my identity a little bit. It went underground because I made friends with like a really big group of people, and it was that kind of fitting in thing. It didn't, the aesthetic of being a witch didn't suit those people. And me, as at the time, kind of a tremendous people pleaser, kind of whose tendrils still have hold of me in some respects, as they do most of us. And then I started going through a bit of quite a lot of trouble, actually. Kind of 10 years of my life was devoted to alcohol addiction, which was not fun, but then very interesting at the same time. And during that time, they say lots of people kind of like lose their practice. Lots of people don't attend to their spiritual practices. But actually, I had a really strong practice throughout. I was visiting and drinking in liminal spaces. I was, talking to entities and spirits of place and things like that. And I was still making kind of potions and lotions and all that kind of stuff. So right now, I'm in a position where I've just got into a bit of deeper study, and I'm revisiting some of those topics, I suppose, with a mature set of eyes. We always think.
Oh, don't know if that's me or if his Zach's frozen a little bit. If you guys can still hear me, let me know in the comments. I'm trying to figure out if it's me or Zach who's frozen. Because the connection has been a bit dodgy, to say the least. So if you could let me know he's frozen, I can hear you. Okay, right. What I'll do is I'll just take him out of the stream for the time being, and hopefully he can either he might be able to try to rejoin. Okay, so his connection has dropped, so hopefully his connection will come back in. What I'll do is I'll talk about my personal experience with spiritual cultural appropriation over the last few years. So it's, for me personally, I'm obviously approaching this as somebody, as a white person in the sweetie shop of the world, which is spirituality. My background's Catholic, and as far as I'm concerned, Christianity is, a culturally appropriated religion from, it's a Jewish religion which the Romans took over and marketed in their own very special way. So I've grown up in a culturally appropriated religion where obviously a lot of the deities, the angels from that religion, are presented as white. So, that's my background, if that makes sense. When I came into spirituality openly, I hear Zach.
I've just sorted it out. Brent saved me. Brent,
You're back again.
yeah, Brent bought it. My flatmate brought in his phone, and now I'm tethered to his phone, which is a lot more stable than my internet connection.
Okay, thank you for you. You're back.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I was gonna ask you, Zach, was about your own experience, because we've spoken a lot about things like yoga and other bits and pieces. And what I'd really like for you is kind of like your take on what you've come across and your own experiences with cultural appropriation.
Okay, so cultural appropriation was, I'm happy to admit it, was something that didn't even flag on my radar until maybe last year sometime. I had actually always had a niggle at the back of my head, and it was probably, I'm someone who likes to do things properly, okay, and I try to do everything I engage with, I try to do it properly. And I think cultural appropriation really came onto my radar properly with that name about a year ago. But if I chart my journey back a little while, I attended a yoga festival about 4 years ago now, and it was basically a really a posh, rich yoga studio in London had decided to put on this festival, and I was invited. There's probably about 400 people there, so it was quite small. And basically, and I don't mean to offend, but I don't care, it was a load of skinny white girls in really expensive yoga gear, really expensive like yoga mats and all the get up, and that kind of that privileged attitude towards yoga. And they were doing yoga for, in my opinion, they were doing yoga for the aesthetic, the mystique, the lifestyle that it's come to represent, and that's juicing, perhaps even veganism, kind of worldwide love and light politics, and things like that. Which, as we know, love and light's rubbish. Can I just say that now?
The other week, yeah, absolutely,
yeah. Complete rubbish. You can't be spiritual and be love and light. And so I looked at all these people, and as you might know, I'm a Kundalini yogi, and I had a sheepskin mat, and that's very traditional for a Kundalini to have. And I walked into this bell tent, and these two girls were horrified at my sheepskin mat. They ran to the other end of the bell tent, and they were like, "Get that dead animal out of this holy space!" And they kept on saying it, "Get this dead animal out of this holy space."
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay. I was completely and utterly shocked. It was like maybe 50 people in the tent. Yeah, maybe about that. And so, I went red, and I kind of seized up, and the yoga teacher, who was a white woman, walked over, and she stood next to me, and she said, "This man's a Kundalini, okay? And you guys, unless you're Kundalinis, will never understand the cultural significance of that sheepskin mat. It is imperative to the tradition. It's a very important part of the tradition, okay? And so don't make judgments about it." And we then did the class, and that's when I first started to think that how could you be doing this thing called yoga, and as soon as you see a sheepskin mat, be instantly horrified, by it? Are you not yourself ripping off many ancient practices, ancient techniques, maybe unwittingly, but I would say it's more pernicious than that. I say, people take the thing they're interested in and discard all the difficult bits and bobs that surround it, So cultural appropriation to me is rife. It happens everywhere. But with yoga, that was when I first came across it. Now, however, I'm not going to stand up and shout about it being wrong. Okay, I'm really not, because it's a really kind of difficult complex thing to kind of start to investigate. Now, I was in a lecture last night actually by someone from Treadwell's Bookshop, which is a great esoteric bookshop, and we were talking about Tantra and the way Tantra came to this country in the late Victorian period. Now, Tantra came to this country when we were kind of in the throes of our imperialism, and it came through white imperialists into this country, and it was changed and diluted by people working in different magical traditions. And the thing that we have now called Tantra isn't the Tantra as it was back in India. However, the lecturer said to me something really important, and he said that what we see right now in the 21st century as yoga, okay, has only been the case since the very early 20th century. So when people say things like you're ripping off a really, really ancient practice, you're kind of not. You're ripping off a practice which is perhaps a bit older than 100 years or something. Are you still there, Rachel? I don't know if I should carry on speaking. So I'll carry on speaking anyway. So cultural appropriation is a really, really complicated thing. And to really get a handle on what a cultural appropriation means for each of us, we have to really investigate that culture that we feel we might be appropriating from. And that's where the interesting bit kind of lies. Now, I was speaking to another person about this. Now, my mind this entire time has been in complete kind of like uproar about this, because at first I was really worried that I was culturally appropriating, my practice was culturally appropriated, and maybe I wasn't doing justice to lots of different people. But I was reminded that there is a difference between kind of like the sacred and the non-sacred. And that is, and the example that I was given was that if you go to a voodoo ceremony, for example, there might be 200 people there, and they might all be dancing, and 98% of them will be black. And if the hello, are you back? I just carried on speaking.
Thank you so much. It's really interesting when you talk about topics that people don't want you to talk about.
Yeah.
You find that lots of stuff gets in your way that wouldn't ordinarily happen.
Yeah.
So my laptop died, even though it was plugged in.
Yeah.
And your internet went. And I think that it's really interesting, the topics that I've been covering recently and some of the reaction that I've had from other members of the spiritual community, because they don't want to address real rooty, earthy, real stuff. And I don't know if anyone else watching this knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure you do, Zach, and I do. People, it doesn't matter whether you say you're love and light and lot. If you're an energy worker and you don't want something to happen, you can put a lot of sway behind that. It's a good job that I'm stubborn. So it doesn't matter how much people try to throw me off of my course. I'm still going to come back to what we're talking about.
You know, kind of I was using an example of kind of, you know, first of all, I said that you know, I'm not gonna stand up and say, you know, and say we need to strip all the prayer flags out of our houses and get rid of our Buddha statues and things like that, because culture and spirituality kind of are connected, but they're not always connected like that. So, for example, it would be racist to presume that all Australian Aborigines made boomerangs, for example. Okay, and so you can't say things like you know, we can't use smudging because all American Indians use smudging. I think we have to be a lot more intricate and a lot more clever about it, and we have to actually investigate those cultures that we're actually interested in. Now, this also comes across as, but we as spiritual people, now if the aim of spirituality is some kind of gnosis, some kind of enlightenment, or some kind of reaching of a combined non-dualistic state, then why wouldn't we sit down with a couple of books and really investigate that culture and really kind of like look into all of the socio-historical context surrounding that culture? Why would we just go to the shop and buy a stick of white sage and wave it around and say we're smudging ourselves, you know? And there's something here about commercialism, and something here about the commodification of spirituality. And there's something here about us wanting, you know, our lives in this present moment, you know, on planet Earth in the 21st century, being, you know, in some senses, very difficult and very overwhelming, you know, and us reaching out for a real quick fix. Okay, and I was before you came back online, you know, I just need to finish that because otherwise it's going to look really silly. It's just kind of like a friend said to me, you know, when talking about cultural appropriation, a friend said to me, if you go to a voodoo ceremony and there's 200 people there dancing, and 98% of those people are black, and you're a white person, and you think to yourself, should I be dancing? Is that appropriation of their culture? The answer is yes, you should be dancing, because the actual people doing the holy stuff, the voodoo priests or the voodoo priests, are standing in there in the center doing their thing. Okay, so you can be a reveler, you can partake in, but you can't do that really precious initiatory bit, which is the center of the practice. Now, it, you know, and I spoke to you about this the other day. Now, would one of us ever pick up a bit of bread, pick up a platter, and try the transubstantiation of bread into flesh? No, we wouldn't. Kind of, you know, and we have to superimpose that respect onto every other culture we come into contact with.
Absolutely, and I think that's the analogy that you've made there is really important, because as a retired Catholic, I
can you retire?
When it suits me. It's one of those clubs that you don't choose to join, but they're really difficult to leave. That's Catholicism. So the absolutely thinking about, would you just go, right, okay, I'm just going to do the Eucharist, I'm going to just do communion, bish bash bosh, there it is. The majority of us absolutely wouldn't. Because you know that a priest has spent years in theology training, you know, in this, you know, they've just spent years training and learning and understanding their craft and understand the magic. And I think we often forget within Christian culture there is a huge amount of magic. There is a huge amount of magic within the Catholic service and the Catholic rites, where has been passed down from effectively. You know, it would have been a mix of things that's come in via the Romans, via the pagan churches. I mean, our whole idea of heaven and the way that God looks is actually a very Roman Greco-Roman view of heaven, and you know, the amount, you know, the Olympians, all that stuff. So plus the Kabbalistic Jewish magic, effectively. So, you know, would we just decide to go and do a church, you know, a Catholic church service or a high Anglican church service? I don't think the majority of us would do. And I think no, and I think what you've said there, having that respect about other people's cultures and where do you draw the line? Absolutely. Make an analogy as a non-Catholic, you can absolutely come into the Catholic service, but you can't take the bread unless you studied, unless you've done your first Holy Communion. And, you know, I went to first Holy Communion classes. So it's, you know, there's all layers to that. And I think that that's a really beautiful way to do it. Would that be okay for Christianity? And if it's not, we need to maybe start readdressing the way that we're looking at things.
Yeah, that's it. And then there's, you know, there's the dissonance around kind of learning about these other cultures in any meaningful way. Now, a very quick survey of the American Indian cultures will show you which ones use which practices. Now, White sage smudging, white sage is something that grows on the plains and in the desert. So we can probably quite safely assume that, not all American Indians are using smudging, There's also something, Rachel, that I've been thinking about, and it's about why we appropriate other people's practices and other people's cultures. And and that's the psychologist in me thinking kind of like, what is it in our makeup that makes us go, I don't want the stuff around me, I want what's, the other thing, the exotic thing. Now there's always going to be a drive to wanting the exotic thing, but what I would like people to wake up to is the richness in practices that exist in these isles. Now, you and I have spoken about our long tradition in these isles of using water instead of smoke to cleanse and consecrate things. We have thousands of names of well gods and deities of water, and loads of saints wells, which before they were saints wells, they were pagan gods wells. Why don't we start exploring some of our own hidden mysteries, and then after we've done that, then see either if we can integrate something from another culture, or if we're then plain and happy with what we've got ourselves. You would also be working with the spirits of the land more, if you use those.
Absolutely. I think it's quite interesting that particularly here in these isles, and probably most of Romanized Europe, considering that the Romans never really did beat the Vikings, and the current sort of certainly the Norwegian Parliament is literally an evolution from Viking days. There is no loss there. That we've lost a lot of our original culture, and I know that David has been watching. I don't know if he's watching, but David and I have spoken a huge deal about when the early church came over, and there was this mix and this amalgamation. At some point that stopped, and at some point the sort of with the practices in, or they were belittled and made to appear to be ridiculous and archaic and stupid, and we've lost touch with who we are. And I think where many of us have lost faith with Christianity, modern day Christianity, not Jesus. Jesus is a whole other ball game, and we're looking for something else. We don't know our own stories. We don't know our own myths and legends, and some of that still is probably a bit stronger in the more Celtic areas, and in the areas the Romans again struggled with. So certainly in Ireland the stories are still there, but Wales, the West Country, and obviously Scotland, mainland England, we don't know enough of our gods and goddesses. And I said to you the other day that the goddess Anacasta, who River Itchen, if you're in Hampshire, she is one of the few where her name is still known. And I've had wonderful conversations with fishermen who literally encountered her and absolutely believe in her. Proper blokes, ordinary blokes. There's, I think that we're looking for something to fill that gap. I think we're looking for something to fill that hole, when we're then gone, okay, I need to think of I'm allowed to do whatever I want. What do I do? And I think there's a, like you say, the Native American culture certainly is popular. It certainly is commercial. And I think there's issues with that, and the actual Native American people receiving the benefit of that, whether that's being recognized within their own lands or whether that's monetarily. I think both of those areas addressed. And I also think that when I first started out, that it was something that felt easy to me. I was, just coming out of Catholicism, and for me there was still a thing about, oh my God, if I connect into the earth energies and into the gods and the goddesses, am I going to be led astray? Is there evil out there? I still had those concepts of evil and good in my head, which we know exist as the church tells us that they do. And I was very worried about connecting into anything earthy and real and dirty and raw. And the Native American culture really appealed to me. And unsurprisingly, my first guide was a Native American shaman who still pops in from time to time. He still does his thing and hardly barely talks to me and just shows me what he's doing. And what I personally found from my journey with him was that he was there to lead me back to Europe. He was there
Okay.
to bring
Yeah.
me back to my own
Yeah.
culture, to my own shamanism. And because I'm somebody who continually develops and continually questions and continually looks at things, he's brought me back to this. I think the other thing that I might have mentioned to you is that the first goddesses and gods that came through to me who I would accept were non-European. It was still, I think, would have blown my mind too much. I had the first goddess I had through when I first started meditating was Sekhmet. And she stayed with me ever since. She hasn't gone anywhere. And you know, I came back to Europe via another guide that I had, who was from this, when I did the research, from the Sami people from the Scandinavian area. And from there I had a Celtic guide. But that's been my journey back to myself, back to my roots, back to what is, and I think we're lucky in this country that actually this is, as white people, this is my country. These lands are my lands. And I have a deep connection. I have a deep connection to it. So actually it really makes sense for me to be working with those energies. It really makes sense from a strong point of view and from a current point of view. And I think it must be a real struggle if, as a white person, you're living in a land which your skin color doesn't come from. So, you know, the Americas or Australia. I don't know. I can't speak for those people. But for me, it's kind of led me back to me. That doesn't mean that I don't chat to Jesus, because he's a great mate. It doesn't mean that I don't hang out with Buddha or Krishna or, you know, any of my, I certainly have not turned my back on my Egyptian gods and goddesses. A, they wouldn't let that happen. But
no,
B,
Sekhmet's quite hardcore, isn't she?
Oh, she is. Yeah, she's not a fluffy lover. She's like, right, let's get in, let's get this healing done. Bish bash bosh. Which I love. I really that's how I heal. So she doesn't really take any prisoners, but she's unbelievably caring and loving in a very real way that actually helps you. So she's, you know, she's a wonderful figure to work with. And you know, she's still up on my wall, and she will continue to be up on my wall. And
I think
I
was just going to say, I think you know, and I think we've spoken about this at length before, and it's something about dead cultures, isn't it? Now it's kind of when a culture dies out, kind of, and it's probably not fair to say that a culture ever completely dies out. It morphs and changes, and you know, like the ritual practices get embedded in the marriage rites and the food and the pottery and the style of clothing of that culture. But when there's a dead religion, as in like the gods and goddesses are no longer kind of worshipped or venerated, it's almost like they go back to source. And they kind of like they hang around for a little bit, and they wait for a time when they can be reincarnated, you know, into a different world. Now, at the moment, we're seeing that with the Nordic gods, because Marvel, the cinema people, they've basically resurrected the whole, you know, some of the Northern pantheon. And you've got little children running around kind of like with their Mjolnirs in their hand, kind of their hammers of power. You know, what a way to kind of venerate the god Thor than to actually get, you know, a hammer like his and play with it and be powerful with it in your hand. So I think when you know, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and that, you know, they were really unhappy about kind of my, you know, my Ganesha statue in my front room. And I just thought, well, yeah, kind of a bit of me was just like, this isn't a dead religion. So if it was Sekhmet, or if it was Set or Anubis or Thoth, you know, I think I get away with it because no one venerates them anymore. There isn't a priesthood anymore to tell me I'm doing anything wrong. And if an Egyptian priesthood started up, you know, and they were Egyptian people, we still wouldn't have to trust them, because we don't have enough literature surviving for them to properly reconstruct that religion. You know, it would be an interpretation. And what's to say that your white-skinned learned interpretation is is more powerful than their brown skin learned interpretation.
Yes.
It's a dead culture, and it falls
Yeah.
down to the people who have studied that culture more, you know. Yeah. So
It no, I completely, it's because it's something that I've seriously considered. When I asked for a logo, I had my very, and there is a lot, the measurements on my logo are exact. You know, there's a massive amount of sacred geometry, platonic solid, which I know is a Greek term, but equally that was studied across Egypt and across China as well. That whole subject was studied all the way across there. I was shown specifically what I was to use as my logo. That didn't come from me. That clearly came from Horace. So, you know, and it's something where I've been out before and I've had that put on my arm, spiritual. Like, why the hell is that emblazoned? Why can I see that with my third eye? And that's a mark which I clearly carry somewhere on my soul. But I seriously considered over the last couple of years, is this appropriate? You know, I am very much into, spirituality is a sweetie shop. You know, it is all very exciting, and when I think you first start to get into spirituality, you do kind of lose some of the focus on maybe being as respectful or you know, as you would do as you become more learned. And you know, when I talk about more learned, I just mean to, you know, understanding, learning more, and all the rest of it. And it's some of the comments, Claire. I have to say this because I need to get that out because I keep on. I have to. If I don't,
Claire.
it's out the corner of my eye the whole time. And you know, part of me did kind of think, is this matching with what the energy that I'm moving into? Can I mix all of this stuff together? And my soul tells me I can, and spirit certainly tell me that I can. Interestingly, Claire has mentioned Aquaman, who for me is actually comes through. If you do any of your Celtic history and your Celtic mythology, and he's very much recognised as one of the Welsh gods who was effectively in charge of the underworld. The seas were the access way to the underworld. So and actually I'm doing a topic on that coming up over the next couple of months. It will come up in Real World Spirituality on a Thursday night, that topic. So, you know, can I say that again?
Oh no, I just said that's fantastic. It's you know, it's really interesting.
Yeah, they're great topics, and what I've really tried to do is to layer in the history of the culture that I'm talking about. You know, when we spoke about Egypt, we spoke about the fact that, you know, pillage. You know, as the Brits, we did pillage. You know, the Egyptians really didn't have enough of their culture left because that's all in European museums. You know, a lot of it's in the Vatican. The same with the Greeks. The Greek Pantheon itself up at the Acropolis in Athens is stripped. We stripped it alongside the Turks sold everything when there was an invasion. We stripped it out. A lot of it again is in the Vatican. A lot of the penises are missing off those statues because there was a very fatty Pope who knocked all of the penises off. The new figure, which is where the fig leaf comes from, because they had to try and patch it up somehow. And you know, they're not in the hands of the people who would have worshipped and venerated and worked with these figures. And I think it's very easy for us in Britain to be very derisory about, I can't get the word quite right, about other cultures and their ability to look after and to manage their own cultural heritage. We like to get that out of their hands. We don't like working with them. We like belittling them and making them feel stupid about making mistakes, about looking after their own culture. And this culture is rich. I mean, you know, the Egyptian culture is massive, you know, is ancient. It was unbelievably magical, unbelievably scientific. just as the Greeks, you know, and yet we're happy to take it all. And it's very similar to the Chinese culture, which is why that you've got actually wealthy Chinese people now buying their own stuff back from us, because we took so much of it. And I think that having that understanding and having a respect for what you get and where you get it from is really, really important.
Definitely. I also think, you know, you sparked something in my mind, and I also think there's a difference between cultural appropriation and spiritual appropriation. Back to kind of like my Aborigines making boomerangs, really. Like, so we can appropriate someone's marbles, we can appropriate someone's sarcophagi, and we can steal them, and we can keep them. But when it comes down to spiritual stuff, we're usually talking about ideas, aren't we? Now, we're not talking about ideas when we're talking about things like bundles of sage and bundles of Palo Santo and statues of Buddha and things like that. But when we're talking about spiritual appropriation, we're talking about appropriating the processes, the ways in which, and the behaviors of another group of people. So, for example, with yoga, lots of people are getting really angry with the namaste. You know, saying kind of like, you know, everyone pronounces it wrong. It just means hello. You know. I've been in yoga studios where we've all, you know, gone namaste. Kind of, do I get enraged by it? Don't know. Don't think I do, because it's an idea, and ideas are, you know, ideas should be fluid. Now, if someone comes along and says, please don't use our word namaste because you're mispronouncing it, and it's, you know, it really insults my religion. Okay, we're faced with yet another challenge, Rachel, and that's, who do we listen to? Now, do we listen to the orthodox of those religions and those practices? So do we listen to the ultra orthodox Jews when it comes to Kabbalah? Or do we listen to the ultra Orthodox Catholics when it comes to Catholicism, when it comes to their practices? Do we listen to the ultra Orthodox North American Indians? You know, or do we listen to those who are more accepting and willing to share facets of their spirituality with other people? Now, the problem with orthodoxy is it is closed. You know, you're either part of the in group or you're part of the out group. And orthodoxy always wants to remain like that. Okay, so, you know, we're faced with a bit of a dilemma here. So I'm sure an Orthodox Hindu would say, please don't have that Ganesha in your front room. It insults me. Okay, but then a Hindu who's more willing to share their spirituality with a person from another culture says it's absolutely fine. So whose voice should be the loudest? And I'm not sticking up for one or the other, to be honest. I'm just saying, what is, do they have to be an initiated priest in that culture before, you know, and is it that person who has to tell us to stop doing something, or can it just be a talking head? Can it be an enraged journalist that we listen to, or is the bar even lower than that? Is it just someone with brown skin, someone with non-white skin, and then we suddenly kind of elevate their voice, you know, above all else? And I think, yeah, okay, perhaps, but then aren't we kind of engaging in kind of like you know, like, oh my God, I feel so scared with this subject. I don't know what to do. I'll just listen to you, because to not listen to you would appear racist, you know. So, you know, maybe it's as a psychologist, but I just don't think this is a two-dimensional kind of thing. I don't think it's
really not. It's really not. And I think some people are going to be offended regardless. And I think some people are going to say, look, if you're respectful, if you understand the cult, where it comes from, if you understand and respect us, if you give some credence to us, if you know, I mean, even things like, you know, if you're buying goods from like Native American sources, is it genuine? Is it fair trade stuff? You know, is somebody getting everything that they do from that exchange? If you're buying tools from India or gods and goddesses from India, is that fair trade stuff? Are you paying a reasonable price as a Westerner? Are you paying that person for making that reasonable price? Are you investing back into the culture that you're taking from? And I think this is the biggest thing: is where is the exchange? Which is a thing over the last few months been self-worship, not just self-worth, know my worth, but absolutely worshipping myself enough to know that everything needs to flow back and forth in some way, you know. And so actually, if we apply that concept to cultures, then actually, if I'm taking something from another culture, what am I giving back to that? And what am I sharing about their history and their heritage? How am I respecting that in my everyday life? You know, am I a spiritual person who on the weekend goes to a retreat or goes to a service and sits there and bangs a drum, or you know, sits there and does some Indian chanting, whatever it is that I feel like, and then on Monday I'm having conversations with my colleagues at lunchtime about foreigners coming into this country and stealing jobs.
That's
and I know spiritual people who do that stuff. I know spiritual people where you've stood there and gone, oh my God, has that just come out of your mouth? Because you know, we are supposed to be open culture. We have got more than our fair share of weirdos, because we are the ones on the edges. We are the ones who break down borders and break down barriers, and who push us past those restricted beliefs. That's our job, is to get rid of all the stuff that's currently in our cultures that is taking us away from our humanity, our connection, and our individual. I think that there's that exchange, and making sure that you're living, it's real. Is it real? If not, you've got no right to do what you've just done at the weekend. If actually, you know, Monday to Friday, you're, you know, I don't know, part of UKIP. You know, I'm not telling everyone UKIP. Please don't get angry with me if you're a UKIP. But that is, if where are you? Is this real, or are you playing at it? Because I think that's where the respect comes in. I'm going to go through a few of the posts, because there's some really interesting stuff that people have popped up. I'm going to pop up Claire's made a comment. Claire's put a few comments as we've gone through. Claire has been eclectic in terms of her religions. So Claire has lived in I think it was North Africa for a bit, and she's been involved in the Muslim religion. She's been involved in Christian religions, and not in a little way. I mean, it's been extreme for her. And what she said is she's found, and this is from her own personal experience of doing what she does, is that if you show respect in the learning, then you get the respect back. I mean, she's been in several settings. She's asked questions and been accepted. And it's not about needing to know, is it? You don't need to know. It's having that openness to learn.
It's the thing that spirituality should be promoting. Kind of, you know, we are doing a lot of these practices to open ourselves up. We're doing these practices to make ourselves better than we currently are. You know, if we're, you know, using your example, if we're banging a Native American drum on the weekend, and then we're coming back and being just closed-minded bastards, you know, for, you know, 5 days of the week, then we're not doing spirituality. You know, there's, you know, and also your bloody sage smudging isn't going to work because you're a bastard. You know.
Absolutely. David's just said Sunday Christians, which I couldn't. It is that attitude. You can't just go to church on a Sunday. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. No, definitely not. It's really interesting, okay, because, and I know like some people are probably never going to want to see me again, or, you know, hear me again after saying this, but, you know, I really didn't connect with the Hindu pantheon. I really didn't connect with it. It was like too exotic. It was too loud and colourful and weird looking, and and kind of maybe that was part of my white supremacy. I'm not white, I'm mixed heritage, but maybe it was kind of something kind of deep to do with that. Who knows? But when I went to India, I connected with that pantheon. I saw that pantheon in context, and now I really connect with that pantheon. And I was sometimes I believe kind of all of our discussions, all of our kind of interpretations and ideas kind of like take us away from what we're really meant to be doing, which is really best illustrated when I went to the market where I bought my Ganesha statue, and I picked it up, and the man said, "Oh, you're a devotee of Ganesha," and I went bright red. I went red like a stupid idiot, ignorant Western man. Went to put it down, put it half down, and I said, "Oh well, no, but I've just done some Ganesha work, and I think being in my house, it will promote good energy." And I waffled on for a bit, yeah. And he went, "Wait a minute," he said, "the power of my God far outweighs the acrobatics of your mind."
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So we are dealing with a divinity, a God, something that will always surpass us. And I am just a mere human being trying to qualify all of these arguments, trying to make, making shit up, basically.
Yes.
That is the entity of his God far outweighs anything my mind can do. And then he said, "So I think you should take the statue because it will bring you good energy."
That was his, wasn't it? That was, yeah, I love that. I love it. Yeah.
And so we are transcended by things.
Yes.
Sekhmet transcends you, and if Sekhmet comes to you and says, "I want you to buy a statue of me and put these offerings on the table," then who are you to say no to a god?
Yeah.
Do you stand there and go, "But you're Egyptian, I can't"? Like, no, you don't.
No, she really wouldn't let me. She she really wouldn't let me. There's Eve's made a couple of really interesting points about this kind of leads on a little bit from what you were saying. Consider cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, how it has been twisted and marginalized. And I think it has been marginalized, and commercialism and spiritual commercialism has absolutely helped that process. And it's also destroyed an attempt to break the local population, which absolutely is a great trait of the British colonial system. Which we make whether you're Irish, whether you're Indian, it doesn't matter. We want you to succumb to us, and we will break you. We will break you by belittling everything that
definitely
makes you the individual you are, and you're less cultured. It doesn't matter that all these cultures, especially, it doesn't matter that all of these cultures have absolutely influenced us. That we are greater than you. And you're nothing without us. She's spoken here about the Banyan Buddhas, or the treatment of human remains by institutions. And actually, when I went to the Vatican, and I did go to the Vatican, I felt quite faint the whole way around. There were so many dead bodies on display. My heart was broken, and it felt atrocious. And I think that it wouldn't have mattered. I don't know if it would have mattered who it was on display. I mean, I have got a strong connection into the Egyptians and to the ancient Greeks, but there was so much on display that it made me feel physically ill, and I thought it was very, very disrespectful.
But that's an ethic of being a Western person. Now, I was in a lecture last night about Tantra, and we were talking about the Agras, who are or the Argas, who are devotees of Shiva, and part of their practice is doing what we would conceptualize as the most evil things ever. Like, the height of their practice is if they can find a decaying body and sit on the decaying body and meditate to Shiva. They make cups and bowls out of human skulls to show people that they are completely unafraid of death. They drink and consume really odd concoctions, like a mixture of blood, whiskey, Ganges River, and Ganges River water, to show that the divine is imminent in disgusting things and deathly things, as well as beautiful things. You know, so it's really difficult, because part of our aversion of death is because we put people in the ground as soon as possible. We have a very controlled viewing of the body, if we have a viewing at all, and we then kind of like have a private ceremony where we put someone really underground and no one can see them, and sometimes we put a headstone and sometimes we can't afford a headstone, but that's what we do here. In other countries, they revel in the idea of death, and they revel in the idea of the decaying corpse as something really beautiful in its own right, which is, I suppose, we have to pick up books and read this stuff. We have to engage with the darker arguments, to actually get a full understanding of where we stand. And I think Eve is completely right. Like, practices have been twisted and mutated, and they've been bullied, and they've been stripped away, and they've been, all sorts of evil, nasty things have happened to practices, and cultures of other people. But this isn't a new thing. We only know about lots of Celtic religion because the Romans wrote about the Celts as propaganda from the front line when they were fighting them. It's always happened. And when one country sets to be an imperial power, this is what's going to happen. And I think it's our duty as spiritual people. Again, I have an aversion to that word, but it's easy to use.
What else can we use? Absolutely,
kind of, like magical person. Me as a magical person, I see it as my I see it as my duty to not be immediately outraged that people are using kind of white sage and and stuff like that, but to actually think, okay, why is that happening? What is the alternative? How do people actually feel? What is the divide between what people are saying and what the media are saying people are saying? Okay. What are the leaders of those communities saying? Who are the leaders of those communities saying? And are their words being twisted through a filter of imperialism or whiteness before they reach my ears or reach my eyes? Okay. And that in itself, that investigation in itself, is more powerful than burning white sage. I tell you, if we are looking for gnosis, we are looking to join with the non-dual kind of like divine, kind of rapid and really good deep investigation into our interest, into our subject matter, is the easiest way to go about that kind of that change.
Yes, absolutely. Investigating, understanding, knowledge is something that Nikki's spoken about quite a lot recently, is that she really enjoys what we would call ho'oponopono, which is that I love you, I thank you, I forgive you. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, I love this, but this feels more like violet flame. If anyone works with violet flame, it's all about affirmations, coming in on a certain vibration. But this stuff works. It's really interesting that Hawaiian people do this. And when Nikki actually recently thought, is this Hawaiian? She said it, and then thought to herself, is Hawaiian? She then did some research into it. And the research that she did found that actually it is not Hawaiian. It's that particular, it's a lady developed those phrases as out of the culture, out of her culture. And it's a slightly different technique. That slightly different technique was then used and appropriated by somebody in the States, a white person, who has then marketed it as a Hawaiian healing system, and it's not. And there's a lot of Hawaiian people who are really, really upset about the misappropriation of their culture and of their religious practices and of their spirituality and their healing practices, because we know that these are sacred things. And her conclusion was, I'm happy to carry on using these phrases, but I'm using them knowing that they are not Hawaiian, knowing that they are not Ho'oponopono. I'm going to use them as they actually are. They're a great healing system, but they are not what they're marketed at. They're not what they're commercialized through. So it absolutely, that investigation led her to a place where she decided, actually, I'm going to carry on using this, but I'm going to disown that label.
And I would argue that Nikki Gorman, bless her, one of my best buddies, I would say her investigation is more spiritual than doing yoga for a year. Okay, because she has achieved a greater understanding, and that's what spirituality is about. It's about achieving greater understanding of ourselves, greater understanding of our environments, greater understandings of our psyche and the things we do. So I think she's completely right. Kind of like getting to the crux of that really muddy matter is more spiritual than sitting down and meditating for 10 minutes or banging a drum at the weekend, and that's what I'm talking about. And I think that we need to move away from the idea of spiritual kind of practices having to have like paraphernalia and things. We don't need to go to a spiritual tap shop. We don't need to wear certain clothes. We don't need to have certain signs and symbols on us to be spiritual people. All we need to do is question and ask questions, and most importantly, ask the really fucking difficult questions, which is why I said to myself, when you asked me to come on, I said, well, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh my God, such bad appropriation is happening. There's so much happening, kind of. I'm not going to do that, because that's what every other person's doing, in my opinion. And it's not helpful. Wallowing in everything that's going on isn't helpful. And actually, taking a slightly broader, perhaps a bit of an oppositional position on this kind of thing, in my opinion, is a bit more helpful.
Claire likes spiritual tactics. I do get it, Claire.
That's fine. And and so do I, but they don't make you a better practitioner,
No,
having
I think maybe this definition of spirituality is the issue. The definition actually, yes, should we be describing ourselves as awakened people who are looking and listening and understanding? Should we be describing ourselves as conscious people who are thinking, who are seeking knowledge, and who are looking and I think it's understanding the difference between for many people, and I was one of those people, when you first start out, going for something that somebody else might consider trite, like a tarot reading, for example, is a way in. And I mean, if you go to a decent tarot reader like myself, you're always going to get those very spiritual, very awakened, conscious readings. Because when you first start doing stuff, you want to know what's who am I going to marry, and how many babies am I going to have, and if that's your way in, that's your way in, and go for it. And I love a good look around a crystal shop, but again, that's something else where you need to be aware. Are you buying crystals that actually the earth is running short of? Or actually, are you buying crystals where they're mined ethically and there's plenty of them left? So there's different ways that you can do that, and you can talk to shop owners and say to them, where have you sourced this from? Is this fair trade? Having those conversations and being conscious and being aware of what you're buying, and investing back into the cultures in some way when you're borrowing stuff. I think Eve made another great comment about this particular country is a country where we have always been a melting pot. Like, my dad's a real nerd when it comes to history, and he's said that that before the Picts came to this country, it was supposed to be a land of little people and fairies. There was no modern day humans as we
might call it. It was, Rachel.
It literally was full of fairies.
Yeah, it was.
Wolves and no,
Well, all these I was just going to say homo
I don't know
forensic.
what we would have been.
Little kind of, yeah.
I don't know what the people would have been, but they were small people,
Yeah.
and the cultures that they had and that very strong connection to the earth, and you don't get leprechauns, and it really gets on my nerves the way that leprechauns have been appropriated. I actually do want to put that out there. Lucky Charms, I find you offensive. You've taken a great spirit king, and you have stuck on the front of your thing with a red flourish accent. It's a good job you taste good, otherwise I might take more offense, but it's go on.
Is the leprechaun, is he Lug? Is that who he is? Is he?
Yeah, he comes in on that vibration. So the Lug is the Lord of Light. Lug is the he comes in the Irish culture, Welsh cultures, and I would also think then there's got to have been some truth to that, to what would have been the ancient British culture, that he is the Christ energy. He is the savior. He isn't a Jesus who came in and healed people. He's a Christ energy who came in and saved people in a very almost Viking, sword in hand,
I like that.
Hair and beard and all of that type of thing. That's more of his energy, who saved his people, who led his people with intelligence and wisdom, but also with a fire in his belly. That's what was respected by the ancients of this culture, so of this country. So he is that energy, but he very much comes from the low-key vibration, and also the leprechaun comes in that vibration as well. So it's the crossovers between the cultures, and we know that Wednesday is Woden's day, Odin. We know that Thursday is Thor's day. You know that Friday is Freya's day. We know that is in our culture, and the whole of the world pretty much uses we are worshipping the Scandinavian just by going through the days of the week. I think that's something we probably should be aware of. This stuff is within our culture, and for me, being led back to my own culture was really important. And I think the more grounded you are, the more real you are, the more you start investigating your local land, your local energy, your local gods and goddesses. The more work you do on the land, the more you're actually tapping into these energies. If you who sits there and just does your yoga and your meditation in your house, but doesn't sort of heal the land around you, doesn't heal the homes around you, doesn't look to the local protectors, guides, goddesses, whatever you want to call them, and maybe try to connect in with those, this isn't going to resonate with you. But for me, when you start to tap into your own personal magic, you're worshipping, respecting the land around you, and those two things go hand in hand. I think anyone who wants to use the law of attraction or any of that stuff to manifest their life, you have to be grounded, and you really at some point are probably going to have to get in contact with your local gods and goddesses.
I completely agree. And I love what Evie is it Evie or Eve?
It's Eve.
I love what you said there, because it's true, we are spoiled in these lands, and when you hear kind of like racist dialogues or racist rhetorics, kind of like get out our country, go back home and stuff like that, I'm just like, well, actually, Britain has been the melting pot of cultures for probably about 15,000 years, to be quite honest. It's the reason we are the way we are. There's another thing to mention here, and that's kind of culture. Things can be syncretic. Now you get, in the ancient world, you get Hermanubis, who is a mixture of Hermes and Anubis. Okay, and syncretism is gentle. Okay, it's not appropriation. It's very, very different. Syncretism is the bolty curry. Okay, so Indian people come over. They come over with their curry after 100 years of living in this country, living in Bolton, living up there. They go, let's make a curry which represents the land we live in. It's an Indian curry, but it also represents that area, with its flavors and stuff like that. That's a syncretic thing. Okay, and syncretism can work in our practices as well. So if we like the idea of Native American shamanism, oh, by the way, that's not the only type of shamanism that exists. There are European types of shamanism which people just don't know about, you know, kind of,
because we've forgotten who we are.
Yeah. So, you know, if we like the idea of smudging, and we like the physicality of it, we like the idea of you know, burning something, you know, whilst we kind of you know, wave it around our bodies, you know, why don't we kind of like do the spiritual thing, the real spiritual thing, and investigate how that was done in our local area, or how that was done, you know, in our country, or in the British Isles. And I've done a little investigation into that kind of stuff, and we, you know, we usually use things like mugwort, you know. After the Romans, we would have used rosemary. We didn't use it before the Romans because I think the Romans brought it over, but we use mugwort, and we use different grasses, and we use barley stalks and things like that. All of these, you know, these are things that we can all be using. So
my which I use, it's going to have to be refreshed this year, is a lavender. This is I mean, you can see it's lost its colour. I need a new one, but you know, it's still got some of its fragrance, because this felt right for cleansing the energy in my home, and it smells beautiful, even if it has faded. So
so we, you know, we can be syncretic in our approach. We can say, oh, I like what that North American Indian person does, and having researched the reasons why they do it, and the reasons, you know, like the historical culture around it, I don't think I can go near that practice because it's for an initiated shaman to do. However, I really connect with that idea, so I'm going to be syncretic. I'm going to connect smudging, but I won't call it smudging because that's very specific. I'm going to connect smoke cleansing with something like mugwort, or with vervain, or with wormwood, or with barley stalks, or English lavender from my country. Not only are you respecting the Native American Indians tradition by saying, I honor your tradition, it's where my inspiration for this practice came from, but I'm not going to go near it because it's an initiated ceremony. It's a priesthood ceremony, but it has given me enough inspiration to go away and figure out my own practice with the energies, with the plants, with the things of my land, you know. And I believe the syncretic approach is the way we should be working in this country. You know, we don't want to put up another wall and say, you know, we're of these isles, we can only deal with kind of like white-faced gods, you know, kind of, you know, it's okay to be of these isles and connect with an African deity. Because look at London, look at Birmingham, look at Manchester, look at Liverpool, you know, those energies are on this land. Okay. And you know, it's okay to connect with Hindu deities and not be either Hindu or you know, be not be Hindu, or not follow kind of like an initiated tantra religion, because you know, deity serves as inspiration, doesn't it? You know, deity, gods come to us for whatever reason that God comes to us. Ganesha came to me through my mother. Okay. Kali came to me at the top of a mountain in India. Okay. I didn't like Kali. I thought she was weird looking. Like, I liked my god with like one head, not like, you know, with one set of arms, with kind of, with, you know, not standing and dancing on a dead person. Thank you very much. You know. But she came to me, and now I've got her on my bedside table, and she's not going anywhere. You know. So people can shout loud as they want, but you know, kind of, my relationship with that god far outweigh the acrobatics of our minds.
I think that's, I'm actually gonna, if anyone wants to write that out, I have got no pen on me.
I'll send it to you.
Did you say, please pop it up as a comment, Zach, on there, because I think that's that quote. I can see you being there in that shop, buying that, and hearing that phrase. It's just so beautiful on so many levels. The use of the language is just amazing. The concept, the idea, the faith, the belief, all of that, the knowledge, just, I think it's wonderful. I do. And what I want to do is to kind of leave it on that note. So would you say it again for us one more time?
The power of my gods far outweigh the acrobatics of your mind.
Okay, that's where we're leaving it. Thank you so much for this evening, Zach. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, guys, for joining in as well. Next month, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do, but it might be something along the themes of pseudo psychology and spirituality. Because there's a big issue with that on Insta at the moment, and if anyone else is on Insta, it's a big issue, and I think something that I'd really like to address. Claire, it is a bit of a mic drop for that phrase. And what will so I'll let you guys know, divine service as always will be the first Sunday of next month, and that'll be healing service, so guys, please come and join me. You want to know about any more of my work, please have a look at my page. All of those normal plugs that you have to do, they're there. Because otherwise it's, you know, I'll probably get my, you know, somebody, one of my friends tell me off for not plugging myself. But that was a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you so much, guys. And we will love you and leave you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Sunny. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.